Hi, Leah.
Hi, Kamna.
So, how did the first week of school go?
You know what? I'm going to say the first week, it should be, we need to judge it by the first month because it's just still too much. It's still too new,
Oh,
too much. We don't have a routine. We don't have a plan. So ask me in another couple of weeks, but it's okay. We're getting through it, you know?
well, that's
Remember, I
encouraging.
have two high schoolers and one's a freshman. So it's an adjustment.
That's a hard time.
Yeah, freshman and a sophomore. And it's the little things that you forget about teenagers. Like, do I pack a lunchbox? Do I put it in a brown paper bag? What if people, now if I bring a brown paper bag, are people going to think I'm not environmentally conscious? And
Oh,
it's a whole, you know,
thank God I'm done.
we forget that stuff.
Yep, yep,
So anyway, are we ready to get into this week?
I am ready.
All right. Well, we have a very special guest today. This is Lisa Starr. She is an elementary fitness and health instructor, teacher. I don't know which is which, but we'll go with instructor. I think that's like adult like. Anyway, and you also, Lisa, did a I'm gonna say full lifestyle change about 10 years ago. And that's where we want to start today, right? Kamna is like, what do you mean
Oh,
by a
yeah.
lifestyle change? And what happened. And from here, we're just going to ask you a million questions, Lisa. So we apologize in advance.
I'm
No, I
in.
don't apologize. I want to know everything.
All
I'm
right, go
nosy.
ahead. Start the first question off, Kamna.
So, I want to know a little bit about you now. That we can tell people your lifestyle transformation was you became a vegan. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. I would say vegan. I actually, when I talk to people about the change, I say whole food, plant-based, which is a little
Oh,
different than vegan.
Why is
And
that
we,
different?
well, a lot of people go vegan for, environmental reasons, which I understand now, and I'm on board with all of that. But if you're plant-based, it's more you're looking at the health, right? So this is a lifestyle that begins with examining like optimal health. And so you can be vegan and eat Oreos for lunch every day, right? There's lots of things that are vegan that are not healthy. And so you can be incredibly unhealthy as a vegan. So I think
oh.
that's to me is the biggest difference is I there are a lot more things that I don't necessarily eat or, I may eat here and there, but as a pattern would be considered vegan, but I would not eat them. So just
Wow, what a great distinction right off the bat.
uh,
Fantastic.
oh, awesome.
Okay, so wait, now I have to ask this question. Do you eat honey?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah. So I guess
so
truly, if you're a true vegan, you wouldn't eat honey, I think.
right.
So
So
that's
then you really
probably the
are
difference. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like this new word.
Ah,
Come
yeah.
on, I think you're whole food, plant-based, more
I
than a
am.
vegan.
I am.
I think you
Oh, that's
are.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So
I
for
have
instance, like my
become,
husband and
yeah.
I went to like a vegan restaurant last night, which was really fun to branch out and try something new. But it's like when you go to a place like that, you really see the difference. And though,
Hmm.
they really did make the distinction of no honey, that sort of thing. So, and there's a lot of things like added oils or whatever, which is fine for an evening out, right? But as a pattern of daily eating, that's not how I would eat. So
So
Gotcha.
I want to go backwards a little bit because
yeah.
I always like to know what was the moment where, like, tell me
Yeah.
about your childhood. Did you eat meat? What was that like?
I did. It's really, there's irony there because I grew up eating like meat and potatoes literally every night because my grandpa was a farmer in Iowa and he was in animal
Oh,
agriculture. So raised beef cattle right there at his home. So I mean, it's so silly. I think about it now. I'm like, I can't believe we did this. But my family would travel back like at Christmas or whatever, and we would fly back with entire suitcases of meat, frozen meat.
really?
Because that was how, my dad was raised and they had this great meat and they would just, that's what we did. And so it was literally, beef, that's what's for dinner every night.
Wow.
And then
And it
when I
had to be
went to,
fresh.
what's that?
It had to be fresh meat,
It
like
was.
better
Yeah.
quality than even
Yes.
anybody. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And that's why my parents did that. They
Yeah.
recognized early on that that was valuable. So,
Yeah.
anyway, so when I went away to school, I was one of those people that put on like 15 to 20 pounds like instantly,
Mhm.
and realized that I wasn't one of those girls that could just eat whatever I wanted. Taco Bell at 2 in the morning every night was going to catch up with me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was able to lose with that weight quickly, but it was, for me, kind of a defining thing that I was going to have to be aware of this, what I was eating. But I still, I never ate really what I would say well, or really paid too much attention to what I was eating. And then, um, gosh, probably going back, I don't know, after my youngest son was born, I ran into a lot of health problems. It started
Okay.
for me with, I would actually, when I would get like the stomach flu, I would get dehydrated to the point of needing to be like, I would have to go to the emergency room and get IVs just to get over like a stomach flu, which was weird, right? And the last time I encountered it, they did blood work and found, oh, you have a UTI. So whatever, no big deal. But from there, it just went into this chronic, like every 4 to 6 weeks, I had a new
Mm.
urinary tract infection. And so then here I'm on antibiotics
Yes.
every, 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh,
And
Oh
so then what
boy.
happens from that is I, develop these resistances. So then I would end up with staph infections and all kinds of crazy stuff. So that went on for a while. And I went to different doctors and just couldn't kick it. So I started like my own, just trying to figure it out. And
Sure.
that's what led me to like, okay, what you're eating is actually important. I really, before that, had not thought much about it other
Right.
than my own kids. I really did start to branch out because I wanted them to be healthy, but I still really didn't have any kind of understanding of the value of what we eat. And so
Mm.
that kind of started me on this understanding of like the difference between eating out of a box versus whole foods, and like the value in preparing things versus always, getting, a box mac and cheese, box stuffing, instant
mhm,
mashed potatoes, all that.
mhm.
So I started cooking more like from scratch, I guess you would call it. And then our family went through, uh, just an entire year of somebody in our house always having strep, from my husband to me to the
Oh
kids.
wow.
And it just was nonstop. So here we were again, nonstop antibiotics,
And
right?
then more, yeah, more antibiotics. Yeah.
Yep. And then that causes all these other things, right? Because your body's all out of whack then.
Yeah.
So, and I'm through all of this learning and trying to figure it out for my family. And in the midst of it, I had a friend watch the documentary Forks Over Knives, and he recommended it and said, hey, I know, you've been kind of learning about this. Like, I want to pick your brain. Just watch this documentary. So I watched it, and that was actually 2017. And so that was like, for me, it was like the light bulb went off and I was blown away. And I'm like, how have I not heard this? Like, why do I not know this? Just the value of the food that we eat and how there's this whole other way of living that promotes health. And it
So
can
what
come,
was the main message that you got out of that documentary?
oh gosh, there was so much.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I think for me, it was the value of nutrients in our foods, and where we get nutrients is plants, and
Mm.
that dairy and meat really can contribute to a lot of disease in our body. That would be the main message that I got. So I really started to just dive in, and I watched every documentary I could find. I constantly read everything I could get my hands on. And I was just totally convinced. So I just jumped all in. And then, the convincing
Wait
factor
a
was,
minute, wait a minute,
Yeah.
yeah,
wait a minute.
Right.
yeah,
I have
So
questions already.
yeah, you can, where I would struggle as a person trying to change my lifestyle is
yeah,
if I've lived a certain way my whole life
yeah,
and suddenly I'm getting this information and I know the pull is there for me to change. Like I had a really hard time with dairy. Probably 5 years I was thinking about giving up dairy and I'm
yeah.
still not there yet. The process to get to the point of I'm going to change my life, I think is how did you do that?
Yeah.
You know what? It was a lot of trial and error, honestly, but I was so excited by the idea of finally taking control of my own health and not trying
Mm,
to figure it out all the time. I was so excited by what I was learning and hearing that I was just like, I just want to try. Like, and if it
yeah,
doesn't work, that's fine.
Mhm.
I don't think
right.
I ever looked at it like, this is just who I'm going to be now. This is what I'm going to
Oh.
do. And I didn't. I just looked at it like, I'm in, I'll try it. And I really, really enjoyed the challenge of trying all these new foods that I had never even heard of, and new ways of cooking that I'd never thought about. And I did enjoy that part of it. There were a lot of challenges, so we could talk about those too.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah.
So tell me about, you watched the documentary and then you went down a
Mhm.
rabbit hole, you found a whole bunch more. When you told your family, your husband
Yeah.
and your kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
were they like, Mom, you've really gone crazy? Were
Yeah.
they like, well, I'm not changing? Like, how did that process go?
So that was the challenge because they
Yeah.
were not with me.
Okay.
They were just not at all. My husband was really, really excited for me because I was so excited. And he definitely was supportive of me doing this, but he was not like, yeah, I'm in.
Hmm.
He was like, okay, but we eat meat.
Yeah.
And my kids too. Like my oldest was 14. So that's a hard age, right? And
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, he would call it like my vegan voodoo. He had all these like
Yes.
all these like little terms for it in our home. And I just kept like I really tried to work with them on just try it. Like just try it. And I probably went too far. Like
Oh,
looking back now, I can see like my excitement was too much. Like you can't manufacture that in somebody else, right? And so I
Right.
probably didn't do the best job of meeting them where they were at. I think I've learned over the years how to do a better job with that. But it was that was the real challenge, I would say, was how do I try this for myself, but yet still feed my family?
yeah.
And
Mm.
and that was hard. And it's honestly, it still is, but I have found a better balance, and they have come a long way. Like, we were this family that I would buy 4 gallons of milk a week. I have
Mhm.
3 boys. I mean, our mainstay was cheese. And so, now they will drink plant-based milk. We just have a balance, but they are not, I'm the only one in my family that eats this way.
So what was the first step you took once you decided you're going all in?
I just cooked like crazy when I could. I do work full time, so that was hard. But I would find things that I liked, and then I would just stick with that until I found the next thing that I liked. Because I found it was really, really discouraging to try. Like I would cook these crazy recipes that I'd go all over the place to find these weird ingredients and
Hmm.
spend all this time in the kitchen, and then it's like a big bummer, and I'm throwing it all away because it's so gross. Even I won't eat it.
Yeah. That's so
So
I
I,
actually
depressing. I
think that's
hate
a
that too.
fantastic point. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
No, I
yeah.
hate that. Yeah.
Yes, it's so discouraging. So I stopped doing that really quickly. Like I started to really hone in on like what were the my mainstays. So I would sort of like think like, okay, everybody will eat pasta, right? And I
Mhm.
found like a really good plant-based mac and cheese that everybody would like. So like, okay, throw that in. And then I would think like in my head, like, okay, we have pasta 2 nights a week. Like maybe it's a marinara night, or maybe it's this sauce that I found that I made. But I tried to like just simplify it that way and come to almost like breaking it up into the week. Like if I knew, like it's a potato night, like I could make the potato dish that I love with pork chops on the side for everybody else.
Hmm.
Or I can
Mhm.
make pizza one night and they have their regular pizza and then I have a vegetable pizza. Or
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it took me a long time though. And um, I think that's one of the things that I really feel is kind of missing in the plant-based world a little bit, is when you kind of step into that and you watch all these documentaries and read, and I was listening to all these podcasts. It's like everybody's all in. And I think there's a space for families like mine where no, everybody's not all in,
Right.
but we can find a balance that works, and it is doable. So it's been a process for me. But the other thing about it though is my kids have learned to eat healthier. Like we don't eat the way that we used to. They've
Mhm.
learned to try things, and then when they try them, then I find, oh, they do like this, and so then this is one that I can make again. And it's just
Mhm.
a little bit of that, pushing in more plants and pushing out some of the other stuff. We're not, I'm not expecting perfectionism, right? So
Right.
Right.
I'm trying, one of the lines I learned that I loved was, don't make perfect the enemy of good, right? So we've made
Ooh,
some
that's a
good
good one.
changes. So we're not gonna worry about being
Okay.
perfect.
So my first thought is what you said was, and I don't know if you actually said this, but what I heard you say was, um, you took pieces of the meal and you
Yeah.
took what you can eat out of it and then made something
Yeah.
else for everyone else. Because I can't tell you, I worked for Weight Watchers for how many years, and that was the number one thing everybody would complain about was like, well, my family's not going to eat
Yep.
this. And
Yep.
and then they would just not do it because they were like, well, then I'm making 2 meals. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So you
Yes.
Yeah.
still
Yes.
made one meal, but made a component of it that was for you. Is what
Yes.
I'm kind of hearing what you kind of did.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly it. So like, and actually what I've learned to do is like, so like we had a big lasagna night at our house the other night. And so I have made like a big 9 by 13 pan of just plant-based lasagna that I love, but nobody else really likes it. And then I sectioned it off and I frozen a bunch of it, right? So then I just
Okay.
make lasagna. So like the other night I just made lasagna, regular, everybody loves lasagna. And then I have mine in the freezer that I pull out. So that, I've learned little ways like that. But really, mostly what I do is like I'll make a pasta dish and then I make ground beef on the side. So they can put the ground beef into this pasta. I know
Right.
this is a pasta sauce they like, so that works. Or
Okay.
yeah, or like soups. I do the same thing with like a lot of soups or chilies or all those things. Like it's just I'll always have like the chicken or the pork or whatever off on the side. And I know a lot of people, again, in this space that are like, there's no meat. Like I'm not cooking meat. If you want meat, you got to cook it yourself. And I think that that just doesn't work for every family.
Oh,
I
sure.
think it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like me with broccoli. I'm not eating it, but I'll make it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
so you don't eat eggs either. I'm sorry. This should have been
Nope.
asked at the beginning. So no eggs or chicken.
I
Okay.
don't. I don't.
I'm just
Yep.
curious.
And no
Yep.
dairy.
And no
And no
dairy.
dairy.
Yep.
So I don't
Wait,
know which direction to go. I have so many
wait.
questions.
Ice cream? No ice cream.
No ice cream. And I'm not even kidding. I was like a sugar addict beyond
Oh, we
sugar
gotta go down
addict.
that road. Okay.
Yeah. And cheese too. My two like total addictions were cheese and anything with sugar. And I remember thinking about like years ago when I heard about vegans, I was like,
Wait.
that's so weird. Who doesn't eat cheese? Like something is wrong with someone that won't eat cheese.
So you don't
I
miss
really
it?
thought that. I don't. I don't. It's weird. And because even the other night, so my son, like they take turns making dinner. So it was his dinner and he begged me to buy this cheesecake, right? That he wants to have. So I bought it. And I'm like, cheesecake would have been like my weakness,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try some. So I had some of his, and I'm expecting to have this like, oh, and I ate it. And I'm like, nah, it's all right. It's just amazing how I feel like I am like the poster child for transformation of your taste buds and how that all
Mm-hmm.
connects with your brain. It just does not have the hold on me that it once did. And I would never, ever have thought that was possible.
So okay, so when you started eating healthy, I don't know if that's the correct term. When you started your lifestyle change, you stopped dairy,
Yeah.
fine sugar too, and meat?
No,
Oh,
no. I was stuck on sugar for a very long time.
okay. I'm
Full
actually glad
disclosure.
you said that because I
Yeah.
think like if you
Yeah.
went all in with all of
Yeah.
that, I'd be like, oh my God, you really are superwoman because I could.
No,
Yeah.
no. Sugar was like my last thing to give up. It had such a hold on me, such a hold on me. I just couldn't let it go. And then in all honesty, I ran into like really horrible acne problems, like atrocious, worse than when I was a teenager. And like, you read stuff and you talk stuff. And I went to the dermatologist. It's like, get rid of dairy. I'm like, I don't eat dairy. Like, all these things that they say get rid of. I'm like, I eat as clean as like just about anybody, but I still was eating a lot of sugar. And
Mm-hmm.
so as I was reading, something said, sugar can be a problem for like skin conditions and stuff. So I was like, well, all right, I'll give it a try.
So
So
you
I
mean
just,
naturally occurring, not fruit. You mean like sugar. You were still
yeah, yeah, like
eating.
cookies, cake, ice cream, that kind of, yeah, like, yeah,
Yeah.
refined sugar. So I just kind of went cold turkey on it, cut it out completely, and my skin did clear up. I don't know if it was a total relation, but it seems like if it wasn't, that's pretty coincidental because
Your
I
skin
definitely
looks amazing. Like I can't even
oh
imagine
Amazing.
you ever had
thank you.
any problem with
Oh,
your skin.
it was so bad and it was so horrible. It was like it was so embarrassing. Like how am I like, at that point 45 and I'm like massive zits everywhere. So I don't know if it was the sugar or if hormonally maybe something just changed. But anyways, what it did for me though was just breaking that habit. I knew like I do not want to go back to that, right? Like I'm that shameful mom hiding in the closet with my cookies, and I don't want to do that again. Like I'm hiding food from my kids because I
Oh my God,
I
I
want
do
to
that.
go indulge. I don't want to go back there. So I do eat dessert now, but I've learned how to make it with like maple syrup or like
Mm-hmm.
dates, more of like a whole food kind of dessert that like will satisfy my sweet tooth. And then I'm not eating like refined sugar kind of stuff.
You're right. It tastes different though when you start eating it
Yes.
again. You're like, oh, that's so. I went somewhere some last week with somebody, and she's like, oh, you got to try this. It's so good. And it was so sweet. Like I couldn't even
Yeah.
eat it, and I wanted to spit it out, but it was impolite. So I
Yeah.
like ate it, but it was
Yep.
too sweet.
Yeah.
The
And I
question I
never, oh,
sorry,
sorry. I never
no,
would have thought that was possible. Like, I
I
really
I
would not have,
don't think it is. Yeah.
yeah, I really would never have believed any for myself. Like, I could say, like, oh, that would work for you. But I am like, I'm all in on the sweets. So I really wouldn't have thought it's true, but I am amazed. And now when I do eat something like, my boys will have like whatever, like the cheesecake. I just like inside, I'm so happy because I'm like, I cannot believe that I can take a bite of cheesecake and I'm not like eating 4 pieces because that's how I
hmm
used to be.
yeah. Do you? The question I always get, which I want to ask you, is how do you get your protein in?
Oh,
Yeah, it's such a good question. It's like the big one, right? So
right.
what's interesting is like most foods have protein, right? So we have like a protein amount that we need, and anywhere from like 10 to like 35%, depending on like the lower protein is actually in a lot of ways beneficial, like the being at that lower range. There's a lot of research in that, which is interesting. That's a whole nother rabbit trail. But our protein needs aren't as like crazy high as some people might think they are.
Mhm.
But every like all of our foods, not all of them, but a lot of foods have protein in them. So for instance, like broccoli is a great example, right? Because per calorie, broccoli has more protein than beef. So when you
Oh,
load
per
up,
calorie.
yeah,
Oh.
I know. It's interesting. I just was reading more about this summer and I'm like, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Hmm.
But part of it is if you're eating a variety of foods, like of whole, plant-based foods, you do get a lot of protein. Like I eat oats in the morning. Those have a lot of protein in them. There's just a lot of foods that do have a good amount of protein. Beans obviously are like a good source of protein.
Hmm.
Nuts, I eat all those things. Seeds, I have seeds on my granola every morning. So I do pay attention to it. And I obviously don't have a problem.
Hmm. So do you have a number that you say you get? Like do you get like 25, 50 grams of protein a day or you don't even watch that?
I don't even watch it. I don't
Okay.
because like when I really start to read about this, everything, like every doctor or nutritionist that's a proponent of this, they really just the thing that they emphasize is getting that variety. And then when you start to look at like the breakdown of things, you see that like when you eat a whole variety of foods, you get all these different nutrients that work together, right? So and protein is one of them. So
Right.
yeah, so I just make sure that I eat like a big variety. I make sure that I'm getting a lot of whole grains because those have protein as well, and beans. I eat a lot of beans, so then I know I'm good.
Hmm.
So you made this change for your health. Have you noticed any? I mean, you talked about the acne, but
Yeah,
the antibiotic usage and the stomach and the like, have you noticed a difference in your health issues?
I have, and that's why, like going back to why did it stick? It was like just a few weeks in, I just noticed some big things. Like my energy level was like through the roof, and the difference is remarkable. So clearly, that's like my body's way of kind of speaking to me, right? Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
this is where I'm supposed to be. Like I used to, I mean, I could never stay awake past 9 o'clock if I sat down. Like
I
if I
can.
sat down on the couch after 9, forget it, I'd be asleep. Like every single night.
That's me.
Yeah, every single night. And so I don't have that problem at all. I mean, I remember like sitting with reading groups in the classroom after lunch. Like if I sat for more than, just a couple minutes with the group, I'd be like fighting myself to like, okay, stay awake, you know? And I don't have that at all anymore. The amount of energy I have is crazy. I'm like, I have to make myself go to bed. Like, okay,
And you noticed that from not the sugar. You noticed that
yeah,
before you even did the sugar. So that was
yeah,
you
I
got more
did.
energy from the less dairy, no dairy and no meat.
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
And I mean, if you think about it, I was just loading my body up with good stuff, right? I'd taken out the stuff that was causing inflammation, that was causing like, kind of dragging me down, right? And I was loading up on all of this good stuff. And, once I started to learn what's actually happening, you just think about your cells are absorbing every single thing you eat. So if you're like hyper nourishing with all this variety of high nutrient food, it just makes sense that you're going to have more energy.
Mhm.
wow. Great point. Like your cells are absorbing that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some
It's
of
so
the
cool.
physical
Yeah.
changes that you've noticed from before and now?
Um, well, actually, interestingly, with my weight would always fluctuate a bit, and I would have to like, just kind of like know that and like rein it in then. So we would always joke that like when my husband did more of the cooking, I'd put on like 8 or so pounds and then I'd rein it back in. So I never, I was never somebody that had a bunch of weight to lose, but I would have to watch it. And now
Mhm.
I don't, my weight is so steady. It is just so consistent and I don't pay attention to it at all. The only thing that I like watch is I have a tendency to overeat like peanut butter. I'll like sit down with
Mhm.
a jar of peanut butter. That's high fat. So if that's what you do, you could run into trouble. But I
Like if
really,
that's your vice, then you
yeah,
are winning in life. Like, right? Like there's so many other like
yeah,
vices.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I would say like physically, that's one of the biggest differences is my weight is just it just maintains itself even over like now I'm in these years right where all my friends are saying like I cannot believe how much weight I'm putting on. There's nothing I can do to get it off. All of that. I'm not having that problem, and yet I know that I am not a person that can just eat anything because I have had points in my life where I put on a lot of very
Mhm.
quickly could put on 15 pounds.
Right.
So I know it's not just like my body's just made up that way. So I do really think that one of the benefits is I don't count calories. I don't super analyze anything that I eat. And I eat a lot of food. I eat a lot, but
Okay,
I,
can we talk about that just for a minute?
But before
yeah,
we do that, do you snack?
I do snack, but here's like, I've made a little rule for myself with snacking.
Okay.
Um, I've kind of learned what things to keep on hand to snack well because I tend to be a snacker. So like,
Okay.
Um, so every week I'll prepare like some sort of like hummus or it's like bean spread or bean dip or something that I really like. And then I keep cut fruits or vegetables in the fridge. So that's like my first line snacking. So like I go to that first because, eating a bunch of hummus and carrots or cucumbers or broccoli or whatever, that really does like kind of curb that snacking pretty quickly because it's pretty substantial. Like broccoli and hummus, that's a
Yeah.
pretty substantial snack. But I found a couple hummus recipes that I love. So I want to eat that. And then the other thing, like when I feel like I'm like wanting it, like the sweet tooth snacking, is I always have like grapes. Another one that I love are dates, just like whole dates. They're like a little piece of candy. So
Hmm.
I keep those on hand. So I just try to be careful about making sure I have stuff on hand that I want to eat. And then I won't go for the kids' Fritos.
Okay. Right,
So
right.
what I was going to ask you was if you could go through like an average day for you of what you eat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So yeah. Okay.
oh,
So my breakfast is pretty similar. I usually do like what I call like a oat bowl, but I have a granola recipe that I love. So I'll just make a huge batch of it and stick it in the freezer. And then I'll do like a scoop of that. And then I load it up with fruit. So like I'm always like a lot of berries, peaches. I've got peaches in season here now. So
Mm.
like this morning it was raspberries, blueberries, two peaches, and then I also have a recipe for like a seed bark granola that I love, but it's a bunch
Oh.
of different seeds. So it's pumpkin seeds and flax and chia. And I make that in advance and stick that in the freezer too. So I just do that like, once every now and then when I run out. But I sprinkle that on top. So it's pretty hearty, by the time you get all the oats
Hmm.
in and all the fruit and then the nuts and all that, I mean, the seeds and all that. So that's usually my breakfast, but that'll change then. Everyone's like, don't you get tired of it? I just change up the fruit, so like
Yeah.
I'll do
do you do
bananas.
frozen fruit?
Yeah, you can. And like in the winter and stuff, I
Yeah.
usually will just use frozen fruit. Yeah. Um, yeah.
And
So
with
that's,
milk? I mean, not like a non-dairy milk. You make your
yeah.
oatmeal with like a non-dairy milk.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I use either almond milk or oat milk. So that's usually breakfast, but then sometimes I'll like make pancakes for the kids or whatever. And, it's the same thing. It's like I've learned recipes that they like for pancakes that
Hmm.
are more plant-based and whole food. So, or yeah, like yesterday morning, I made like a tofu scramble. It's like kind of similar to like what would be scrambled eggs, except for it's
Hmm.
tofu with peppers and bananas and all that. Banana peppers, sorry,
Oh,
and
I was like,
onions.
whoa, you put bananas in your I was so
Too gross. Yeah. Yeah, so those are some breakfast things. And then lunch, I always have a salad for lunch. That's just what works for me. But by salads, I mean like usually once a week. Now with going back to school to be on Sundays, I make a huge salad that's like one that you can make ahead that has like the one I made for last week had like beans and corn and peppers, black beans, corn, peppers, onions, cilantro, like just load it up. And then I've different dressing recipes that I've liked, or even I'll use like balsamic vinegar. There's different flavors of vinegar. So I can stick that in the fridge, and that's usually good for, 4 or 5 days. So that'll just be my lunch then every day.
So you make like
Wow.
a big, I'm going to use a Jordan. I don't know if you ever heard of Jordan Syed. He always calls it a big ass salad.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
convinced that like that's a huge part of staying like healthy and in shape is one every day you should have a big ass salad.
Yeah, that's
So
me.
you
Totally.
and you
Yeah.
just load it all up and it doesn't get soggy or gross, the lettuce by the end of the week.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say. I don't put the lettuce in with that mixture.
Oh,
So it would be like the peppers, the beans, like corn, that mix will all hold up okay in the fridge. And then I just have like spinach or kale or lettuce on the side. And I will do a scoop of greens and then a whole bunch of the other mix on top.
oh,
So
that's a great idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
so for work, it works well because I prepare it all on Sunday and then I just take it to my little fridge at school and I just leave it in there. And then I don't even have to think about lunch the rest of the week. It's done.
Nice.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then for dinners, like it just kind of rotates. Like we'll have a taco night. So I can just make, beans that my family with the beans, but then I make the beef on the side, so I'll have, I use corn tortillas instead of flour tortillas for me. Just little adjustments like that. Usually, like a pasta. We eat a lot of pasta. I finally switched everybody over to whole wheat pasta. So there's a whole lot of things I can do with that. Um, I kind of think in terms of like those staples, like a potato night, like a baked potato bar where they have the toppings they want, I have the toppings that I eat, those sorts of things.
What do you do when you go out?
That's hard. That's a hard one. Um, Generally, like, salads are always a safe bet. As far as dressings, like most restaurants will have like red wine vinegar, and I like that. So I can just have that on a salad. Um, and other than that, a lot of times, like even like pasta dishes you can get with like just vegetables. When I go out, everything's cooked with oil and salt and all that stuff. So it's just what it is. I mean, I don't have a health reason that I have to be the 100% of the time.
Mm.
So I just choose dishes that are as close to, the way that I eat as I can. And a lot of times, like sometimes you can play around with like the sides, like get a potato with, whatever, like a side salad or yeah, and just play around with the menu a little bit that way. But I would say that that's a drawback. We were never a family that ate out a lot,
Hmm.
so it wasn't too big of an adjustment, but it is, it is a thing to have to like think ahead. I think a lot of times I do look at the menu ahead of time just so that I can think about it and be a little prepared because you sit down, you don't want to take 20 minutes to read through every single thing on the menu.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're not gluten free.
I'm not.
And you think, and this is just because Kamna and I are doing an upcoming episode about like things you hear and like we're trying to
Yeah,
figure out like I feel like you have almost like fixed yourself inside out, but still managed to do the gluten. Like now I'm starting to
yeah,
think like maybe it's not always the gluten for people. Maybe it's the
right,
meat and the dairy and the sugar. And it's
right,
like
Hmm.
right.
we're trying to blame it on gluten. And I mean, that probably could
Yeah,
be, but it's also
yeah,
sounds like the
yes,
quality of gluten you're having
yes,
is different.
yes,
Like, what
yeah.
kind of oats do you buy? I know this is a stupid question, but
No, not stupid. I just buy the regular, like traditional oats, just like plain oats. And
okay.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I have not had any trouble with gluten at all. And I think you're exactly right. I think for some people, gluten is the thing.
Right.
And for other people, it's not. But gluten isn't something that like contributes to general disease, right? Whereas if you look at meat and you look at dairy, those do contribute to, heart disease and like our top, if you look at the list of top killers in America, a lot of those are impacted by diet and nutrition. And gluten isn't one of those things that just contributes to general disease. But for some people, like you said, it is an issue. And it's,
Okay.
yeah,
Do you eat popcorn?
I do eat popcorn. I have an
Okay.
air popper.
Yeah.
So we just air pop and then everybody else melts butter and salt and does theirs. And then I have all kinds of different things I do with popcorn. So
What about bread?
I eat bread. I'll eat like a lot of times Ezekiel bread.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Kamna.
Yeah.
No,
I'm hogging Lisa. Go ahead.
no, it's a very interesting. Is there anything that is challenging for you in this process? I mean, you talked about your family, but for you
Yeah.
personally?
I think it just relates to how I've handled this with other people more than anything,
Mhm.
because it's so drastic and it is so weird. And I get that because it's not how I always was. So I understand that. And I think it's just been a process of learning. I didn't come from like a place where like I had my group of people that this was their thing. Like I was just doing
Right.
this on my own. Just my one friend that watched Forks Over Knives, and she was trying to do this somewhat with her family too. So we kind of muddled through together a bit on that. But I think probably a challenge has been just learning to I never want to make people feel self-conscious, or
Mm.
I know that everybody's on their own journey. And so it can be hard at times, like, there's a potluck and then you
Yeah.
don't want to be rude. I just have had to work at figuring out how to be okay with who I am and the way that I do things now, but not offending people.
Right.
It's a hard balance, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that brings me to a question of like you said potlucks and parties. Like you go to a graduation party, you don't want to eat the
Yeah.
cake, or what do you tell yourself?
Yeah, it's weird. I know. And I'm telling you what, I was like the wedding cake girl.
Yeah,
Like
I love cake
I
so
loved cake.
much.
I loved cake so much. I mean, so, so much. Like, and nobody, like, it's those, your people, like, from years back, like, my one friend, I still get together with her. She's like, you really still don't eat cake. I'm like, no, I really don't. It's like, I don't know if I believe you. But I just don't. And I don't know how to explain it other than it just doesn't taste right to me anymore. Even when
I want that.
when I have tried eating cake, like we were at a graduation party and I'm like, I'm gonna have a bite of yours, and I'm expecting to like, oh, I'm gonna go get my own in a minute, because there isn't any reason why I can't. I can eat
Right.
it if I
Right.
want to, but I didn't even want to. It's like feels oily and weird. It's so sugary. It just doesn't.
I want that. I want
Yeah,
that feeling. I do.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm just saying, for me, I would never have thought I could get there, but I am definitely there. And
Wow.
there's a lot of science behind like how our brains are wired for pleasure, and food is like a big part of that, right? And so you have to, like, I guess it's part of like interrupting that. Like I guess I've just gotten to the point where I when I went cold turkey, like I'm just not eating sugar anymore, then I had given it enough time, I guess, that like,
Yeah.
and I had enough. I guess the other part of it is I had found enough substitutes too, that's like,
Yes.
Yes.
I enjoy
Yes.
this, I want this, and I can look at it and say, I used to want that, but I really love this. So I'm just going to go there. Right. And so that's another thing
Yeah.
too, is I keep things in the freezer. Like I'll make a dessert for me and then I portion it out and I stick it in the freezer so that when I have that like sweet tooth moment, it's like, no, this is good. I like this. I'm going for this.
I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest key to your success probably is to have alternatives ready so you don't feel deprived, but you're also happy that you have something as an
Hmm.
Yeah.
alternative.
Yeah. I don't feel like I'm making a sacrifice. And that's, I think that's probably a really big piece of it, because for forever, if I had to deny myself a piece of cake at a party, I would be like the kid pouting in the corner, like,
Yeah.
this is not right. I'm depriving myself. And I just
Right.
don't feel that way now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Has your family changed the way they eat and all of this?
They have. I mean, for sure, they've made a lot of changes, especially my husband. I mean, God love him. He's really, really, really tried. But he still does. He loves to eat meat. He's all about the ribs and
yeah.
steak. And so but he has cut way back. And so, that's great, right? I mean, he's cut way back
Sure.
and then in place put in a lot of really good things that we didn't used to eat.
Hmm.
And my kids too, I will say, what's been really sweet is my oldest son. He was probably gave the most pushback, and now he's just moved out this summer. And I went over to his apartment, and he was cooking chicken, and then I'm just watching him. He's making these wraps, and he starts pulling out of the fridge individual containers of chopped onions, chopped cucumbers, chopped tomatoes, and I'm like watching him, like, what is going on? So it's like these little seeds have been planted that I did get a lot of pushback from him, but in the end, he really does care about eating healthy. And on his own,
Of
he's
course.
really making effort. Just got to get their own time, right? But I feel like the seeds have been planted and I have provided it for them. There's lots of options at home, and they will. I mean, they definitely try in their own way.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Amazing.
It, I really have more questions about it and more like specifics, but I won't go into them. I don't think I might randomly shoot one out at you.
Go for
But
it.
so what do you think, Hamna? Do we have time to jump into the next topic?
I think we
Oh, do
can
you
make it
have to
a
run,
new
Lisa?
one.
Are we keeping you? All
No, I'm good. Thank you. I love
right,
this. So fun.
all right, I have to pause, right? Give a pause.
Yeah. Well, let's do a wrap up and then we'll come
Oh,
back.
am I screwing you up for editing?
You a little bit, but that's okay. Um, thank you so much, Lisa, for being with us and giving us a lot of really valuable information about becoming a vegan. I think people can apply this to any transition they want to make in their life. And
If I could just throw out while you're on that, just a couple things. I have great resources. The
Oh,
Forks Over Knives website is great. It has like a 21-day like free starting guide and just full of great information. And another one that was really helpful was Plant Pure Nation. They're
oh,
full of great information. Yeah, those are just a few to like start you down the trail if you
okay.
want more information.
All right. Well, thank you
thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Yeah,
I
thank
can't thank you
you.
enough.
Thank
You.
you.